Hey, what's up everyone? I've been wanting to make a video about this since I first witnessed this. Since I first saw this, I wanted to make a video about it. I seen it about 7 days ago, about a week ago I'll say, and I've been wanting to make a video about it ever since then. So I actually had the video in my history and then I couldn't find it, but now that I've got the video ready here, I'm going to show and talk about it. Did Buzz Aldrin actually admit that we did not go to the moon? That we actually did not that we did not really actually go to the moon in the 1960s. So, supposedly in the late 1960s, we went to the moon. Well, if you watch this clip from Buzz Aldrin, which, by the way, is an ME within itself, because I remember Buzz Aldrin, he came on Stephen Colbert and gave a hint and said, basically, well, everything happened exactly as this whole world saw it. There's nothing to hide. That's basically the way he put it, if you look at the interview with Colbert. Which, before he got all political, he was alright. Colbert. But moving back to this, check out this clip. It's all over the internet right now, and Buzz Aldrin himself has admitted several times that we did not really go to the moon. Now, I don't want to cause any controversy. I don't want to cause any type of issues, but he has stated several times. I mean, think about the technological capabilities. First of all, is what I've got to say that we had in those times. In the 60s. But let me show you what he stated first, and then I will do my talking afterwards. I know I've already talked a lot for 2 minutes. I'm going to post in the description that it starts at 2 minutes.
Why has nobody been to the moon in such a long time?
That's not an 8-year-old's question. That's my question. I want to know, but I think I know. Because we didn't go there, and that's the way it happened.
You notice how he put his hand right there, just like I don't know, like he caught himself. I think he wants to state the truth. Assuming this, I think he wants to state the truth before. He just wants to state the truth in his old age. I think he just wants to get the truth out there. Now, I remember him passing away shortly after the Colbert interview with him. I remember him passing away around the time of the whole Antarctica thing, where he was going to go to Antarctica, and then he said something's going down in Antarctica, and then he just died. But that's an ME within itself. I have very vivid memories of him passing away. Then all of a sudden he was at the presidential speech, and then he was at the inauguration and all kinds of stuff, and boom. So he's still alive. But that's how this stuff goes. That's how these MEs go. I don't know what happens, but I know that's how it goes. I don't have one solid explanation of what's going on. But when he stated that because we didn't go there, and that's the way it happened, and then he backtracked and started talking around.
And if it didn't happen, it's nice to know why it didn't happen, so in the future,
His eyes are all watering.
doing something, we need to know why something stopped in the past that we wanted to keep it going.
But that's what he stated. Something stopped. It's nice to know why something stopped us in the past that we didn't keep it going. I don't know. So, and he said money is a good thing to have, basically. We need money to keep going. But, yeah, I think he diverted off into something totally different after he said this.
That's not my question. I want to know, but I think I know. Because we didn't go there, and that's the way it happened.
But yeah, that's what Buzz Aldrin himself stated. Because we didn't go there, and that's the way it happened. And I've been wanting to make a video on this for a week now, but I just now decided to just do it. See, if you think about it, I just want to state some of my ideas on this. There was a conversation when I last got my phone up. I had which I've still got the same phone, but I went in there and I think I was going to the AT&T store for another cord at that time. This was about the time that the Superman versus Batman movie or whatever I think it was that came out, and they were talking about that. They were big fans of the DC and Marvel and all of that. And they were talking about that movie, and then they got into the fact of, do you think we ever landed on the moon? Okay, and this other guy said, of course we did. It actually happened. And he said, yeah, but are you sure? He said, and then you're telling me, the other guy started getting into this conversation in the AT&T store, and I don't know where the conversation came up, and I'm surprised it did, but they were arguing over whether we actually went to the moon. Two people didn't think we did, and one person did. So they stated, you're crazy, you're nuts. And another ME thing is we've been to the moon. They claimed we've been to the moon 7 times. That there were 7 lunar landings. That's what they claimed. I remember 1. We've been there once and never went back. And now they claim we've been there 7 times. So that's another ME within itself. There's 3 moon ME situations. So, and also how the moon just changes all the time anymore. It's just not normal. The moon phases are not normal. But back to this. So I was in there and they were stating this. They had this conversation about how he said, you're telling me we went to the moon when we could only hold a few kilobits of data, just a few kilobytes of data on a device or on something, and it took buildings the size of huge buildings in New York City to even hold the data on these gigantic floppy disks that they put in there, and they would move. They were humongous. They were huge. It looked like these gigantic walls of machines, and those were the servers, and those were the huge devices holding the data. Those were the devices that held the data. And he said, you're telling me that we went to the moon when you couldn't even hold a half a second of audio of data on a device, and they went to the moon in a pod, a tiny little module, a lunar module. They went to the moon in a tiny little thing when it took and they were actually able to transmit the data back to Earth on that. And I've wondered that myself. I've wondered that many times. Think about this. They were supposedly able to transmit that data from that tiny little lunar module, which at the time it took us entire huge buildings to hold a minuscule small amount of data held on gigantic floppy disks, which that data is still held there so that it's not hacked, because those are not susceptible to hacking. They still keep the government's most important data in those floppy disks. They were going to end that recently, but I don't think they did. I'll have to find that out. But less than a half a second, just that's it. That's all it was able to hold. A few kilobits. Now we're able to hold 264 gigabytes on a tiny little micro SD card, the size of just the size of nothing. And we still haven't gone back. And we have that kind of technology, and we still haven't gone back. Maybe we sent some little thing up there to check and see if there's water, but we've never sent any humans back. If we even went to begin with, we never sent anyone back. When we had this kind of technology that we can hold in our hand, the palm of our hand, the entire world's information, in the blink of an eye, we can have information transmitted, data transmitted over, held in multiple servers worldwide, and data transmitted through all of these multiple devices interconnected, live streaming, and just all this connectivity, and we can communicate with one another wirelessly from device to device. Just our voice transfers over, not only lines now, but wirelessly transmitted. We have all of this technological communication, GPS tracking and technology, microchips, and tiny radio frequency identification. Look around you at all of the technological advances that we have seen since that time. And at that time, they were unheard of. They were unspeakable. You couldn't imagine such technology. The people of that time could not even imagine such advancements, such capabilities at that time. And we have all of that now in the palm of our hand, or a tiny little microchip or micro SD card, and everything stored in the cloud, data transmitted over the air. We can do all of this, but yet we still don't go back, and we're just now talking about the Mars mission. And everything that we send out there, why does the image look animated? Or you will read at the bottom, this is an artist depiction of something. Or this is an artist illustration of something out there. If we've got these vivid pictures of it, then why, of Pluto and of Mars and Jupiter, Neptune, Uranus, Neptune, it's still the same pictures that were from years ago that I still see in those cards that I have that when I went to the Space Center. That's the same images that we're getting. The ones you see in our encyclopedias, the one you see in, I don't know why everything looks so animated when you look at it. Another question I do have is, if we do have 4,000 satellites around this Earth or so, why do you never see them when you're looking at a live satellite view? You don't see many stars, and you don't see the other satellites. You'd think, and if there were that many satellites around this world, that it'd be blocking the sun. That's just my question. But if we sent how could we have sent humans to the moon in the 1960s when we did not even have the technology to wirelessly transmit data, let alone live video footage, live streaming down to Earth? Live streaming was unthought of wirelessly that way, and then transmitting it to every home in the United States. Now, if you're live streaming something in the 1960s from the Earth, yes, from a live camera on Earth, you can transmit it for this entire world to see. But think about the moon. The moon being as far away as it is, in the 1960s, sending a transmission directly from the moon. Now, I'm not saying it didn't happen, I'm just kind of skeptical now. I'm just kind of skeptical. As many are. Millions are. Not just myself. Millions. But I used to think maybe we did, but then I don't know. I just don't know. The technological capabilities at that time were so much more limited in comparison to what we have today, and we still don't go out of... some say out of fear, out of not knowing what to expect, or or they just haven't gone back. Why wouldn't you have gone back if you were able to go in the 60s? Think about it. It took entire buildings to hold the data on gigantic floppy disks, and these humongous devices run by various operators and things in the 1960s. They held this data in these gigantic devices, which would be the servers of the time in the 1960s. They held that data, the government's most important data there, and they could only hold a few kilobits. A few kilobits. That's nothing. That's nothing. And if that's all we could hold was a few kilobits in the 1960s on something that massive, how are they going to have enough data in that tiny lunar module to be able to send and receive and transmit data and signals back to this Earth and transmit the live stream of the lunar landing? How is that going to be possible? That's just my question and my explanation of what I'm wondering. I have that question. How would they have had the data in the 60s, the 1960s, to have live streamed and transmitted the signal of the moon landing and all of what took place on the moon to this Earth back in the 1960s, when we didn't even have, when we could barely store a few kilobits of data on a humongous, gigantic device in New York City or something. We barely could store anything. We had a minimal amount of data we could store on devices, and they had to be huge. And something that small that carried humans to the moon, transmitted live streamed data and video of what took place all the way from the moon in real time to this entire world, and enough to be able to send video and audio. It's questionable. It's quite questionable. And seeing this video from Buzz Aldrin, who is apparently alive in this world now, seeing this video from him really just kind of it makes it more and more likely that my theory, my idea that I have of this, is more likely. Anyway, moving back to that, I just had a question of that, and I want to know what you all think about this. Sorry to go on so long regarding this, but I had several questions, and I had several theories of mine that I wanted to state. That's one of them. So, much love. and peace. I'll do a shorter version next. Bye.